good to go. So welcome one more time, everybody, on this info session on the reusable packaging blueprint and the related online training courses about it. So my name is Kaisa. I work at the Mission Zero Academy, and we have been supporting the Reuse Vanguard project with the capacity building and the training development. And together with me, we have Nathan from Zero Waste Europe, who is the lead for the project. Would you, Nathan, like to introduce yourself shortly to everybody, and we get into it after?
Yes, sure. Hello, everyone. I'm very glad to be speaking to such a diverse audience. So my name is Nathan Dufour, or Nathan. You can call me Nathan, it's fine. And I work for Zero Waste Europe. It's been 5 years, and I lead the work on reuse systems. And that's a big part of it is through the Reuse Vanguard project, which I will introduce to you in a moment.
Yeah, perfect. And this session is meant to be interactive, so please don't hold back your questions. We are first and foremost here to answer any questions that you might have. So yeah, add them in the Q&A function at any point, so that we can answer them on the spot. So yeah, please don't hesitate. And would you first of all try to explain to everybody, just to make sure that we are all on the same page, what even is the reusable packaging system and maybe what it also isn't? Because we have seen some common misconceptions about the topic.
Absolutely. Can you hear me well? Yes. So all of it is actually in the material that I'm going to present. But to give you a glance of the last definition of what is a reuse system under the packaging and packaging waste regulation, which is the latest legislation at the EU level that needs to be implemented across the European Union. It's defined as an organizational, technical, or financial arrangements together with incentives that allow reuse either in a closed loop or open loop system, such as a deposit and return system that ensures that packaging is collected for reuse. There are loads of concepts, a lot of things happening in there that needs deciphering because it doesn't tell you anything about how to implement this. But it is about reusable packaging, which in itself is defined as those designed to be reused multiple times and accomplish as many rotations as possible and must be inserted in a system, in a reuse system. So both are connected. So you don't speak basically about a reusable packaging if it's not part of a reuse system. So that needs to be differentiated from a refill option. So when you bring your own container, for instance, to a retailer, which is nice and reduces waste, but this is a prevention measure. This is not something that is called reuse as part of the EU definitions. So there is a lot to say about that, but maybe I will stop here and answer some questions in the chat later on if they are on that topic.
Perfect. So yeah, there is actually some regulations behind all of this, so it's not quite free for all anymore, and I think it's very much needed so that we are all at least speaking about the same thing when we are talking about reusable packaging and especially the systems around it. And in the Reuse Vanguard project, you work with cities in different countries and different contexts, and in different ways to try and find the best ways to implement these kind of systems. Why do you think that cities or regions should consider setting up such a system? Yeah, what benefits can they give, or is there some other reasons why a city should consider such a system?
There are lots of benefits to it, and a lot of difficulties as well to set it up, because we're in a context where single-use packaging is the rule and reuse is the exception. And we want to make it the other way around so that we really drastically reduce waste. And the type of waste that cities especially have been dealing with or not dealing with, because it's difficult to deal with it. There's an increasing amount of it in the market out there, and it's set to continue to increase. The projections speak about an increase by 20% until 2030, while we are already on an increase of about 20% as well, 21, I think, in the last 10 years. So this is a bit worrying, and we need to tackle that waste issue. And in order to do that, we have come to the conclusion as Zero Waste Europe, and I believe with MiZA and the partners of the Reuse Vanguard project, that the best way to move forward is to bring people together and design reuse systems so that the packaging is circulating as much as possible, as many rotations as possible. Each rotation is packaging waste less, to say bluntly. So there is a big opportunity there, but there are big challenges as well, and that's why this work I'm going to present to you now is about to help guide people, cities, businesses, and so on to implement reuse systems in the right way. And make sure it delivers on its environmental promises, on its economic promises as well, economical ones, and then also on the health aspect, which is also an aspect I will be touching upon during my presentation.
Yeah, and if you want to show a few slides, feel free to do so at any point. For example.
I think I will do it if that's fine. I've prepared a few slides so that I can actually guide people through all that work. In the meantime, I suggest that during the presentation you maybe open the blueprint, which is the main work I want to discuss today, and then that we want to also to present, because it's the basis of the Reuse Online course as well, that we are promoting through this info session. So yeah, I strongly suggest that you open the blueprint. Maybe we can share it in the chat box as we speak. So I will just launch the slide right now. If you give me just a second. Can you see it? Okay, great. So as I said, I work for Zero Waste Europe. And just to give it to you as a glance, Zero Waste Europe is the one behind the Reuse Vanguard project, which I'm leading as a European coordinator, and I'll tell you more about it. And then we have a link with Mission Zero Academy as well. It's our sister organization, and we've been working quite closely together, also around the Reuse Vanguard project, to turn all the testing and learnings and so on into actionable tools like trainings, online training sessions for specific audiences. So that's the link between all this. I think it's important just to clarify this. A quick word about Zero Waste Europe, very quick one. Just to say for those who don't know us, that we are a European network of communities, local leaders, experts and change makers working toward a better use of resources and elimination of waste in our society. We have 23 full-time equivalent in Brussels, but that's just the tip of the iceberg in Brussels, because we are actually a network of 30, not even more actually, it's 39 organizations in 30 countries. And we do three main things. We focus on all the influencing political debate and policies, so all the advocacy type of work. We work on implementing zero waste solutions with cities, with businesses, and so on. And then we build also. We do a lot of community building type of exercises, and we offer a lot as well of when it comes to capacity building and so on through that network, through that movement, and the resources that we collect either on the policy side or on the implementation side. So it's very much combination of the three pillars that makes our specificity as an organization in Brussels and Europe more broadly. So that's just a picture of a lovely team and network. Some of its representatives were many more people in the back, but so yeah, the numbers are right on the top left corner this time. So moving forward with the core business for today. So it's really about the blueprint, the Reuse Vanguard project, and the blueprint, which aims at harmonizing the implementation of takeaway food and drinks packaging systems for reuse in Europe. We started that project of it, and we have another 3 years coming up as we have continued funding support to deliver on that one until mid 2028. So it's a long-term project. Quick table of content. I'll be speaking about the RSVP, about the fact that it's from vision to action and what it means. Why does it matter to you and other stakeholders? The fact that we're building on local action, very much so, and then giving you a short glimpse of what the blueprint is, and especially its essential criteria. So moving forward, as I said, so it was launched in 2021. What we want to do with RSVP is to create the conditions for a large uptake of reusable packaging in key sectors. The initial focus was on beverages and then e-commerce and takeaway food and drinks. And then among those three, we decided to focus on takeaway food and drinks for the reasons already explained. And our level of ambition is quite high. What we are doing and the blueprint I mentioned is really to co-create with a quite broad network of people, a reference model, a blueprint to enable the use of reuse systems in a consistent and effective manner. And what we want to do is not to standardize everything, because I hear people screaming when I say harmonizing. It is not about standardizing everything and harmonizing everything. It's about helping to define a framework that allows for three key things, which is aiming for simplicity and user-friendliness of the system that is deployed, also its optimal performance, and then also the idea that it should be scalable and replicable, very importantly. We want to massify things, but we need to test a few things before we get there. That's a little at a glance picture of the European ecosystem we've been building. We have 7 core partners that you can see there. The slides will be shared, so you can take the time to review this, but these are the core people really doing the at times challenging work, bringing local ecosystems together and implementing the work, and so that we can actually collect the learnings and turn that into something that is more objectivized and replicable elsewhere. Our main sponsor, Plastic Solutions Funds, it's there, and then there's also a quick look at the cities that are involved through the local projects. There's the city of Lisbon as well that is getting closer, and then there are other cities that gravitate around that pool, and with whom we are really trying to engage more and more and guide them in the implementation of reuse systems. And then there's many stakeholders involved. It's really only a few. There are more in the background, but that gives you an idea. Moving forward, so from vision to action, we've run a couple of audits in some cities. Local authorities have done it, and then our partners have done it in partnership with local authorities. And giving 2 examples, which is the Barcelona one and the Aarhus one. So basically, one thing that is a clear misconception is that we tend to calculate everything in terms of waste, looking into the weight of things, which is misleading completely, because it doesn't give you a clear picture of how much a problem the takeaway waste is, not least, but also e-commerce and so on. So the packaging has become more and more light, while at the same time it's taking a bit more and more volume in our bins. So that's why, for instance, in the case of Barcelona, the audit they run in some places gave them 30% of public bin volume, but only 6% of the weight. Which ones you should have a look at? I believe more in the volume than in the weight, for many reasons. We can discuss that afterwards. And then the Aarhus case as well in Denmark, where they have a very nice project we can talk about as well. It's about 48% of public waste, which includes also some beverage containers. But it's a lot. It's a lot of the volume. And what we aim for is really a Europe where reuse is standard practice once again. It used to be the case, and now we want it back. And we want it back anchored in systems that continuously evolve and improve over time. So it's a very dynamic sort of model we are putting forward. We're putting this forward through the blueprint. And so the blueprint has a couple of purpose and intent, and then the target audience. I wanted just to give that to you as well. But so it's basically a strategic model and framework to support the development of and scaling of resilient reuse infrastructures for takeaway. And it's focused on urban areas, mostly because that's where takeaway is largely taking place, even though there are other places as well, like gas stations and so on. And then the problem as well that we want to tackle is that too often measures are deployed without the system level support to make it truly viable at scale. And so hence the talk on policy tools, policy support that is required to make it the norm. In terms of target audience, it's mostly about public authorities and private entities. Because it's those that I've been involved in the build-up and the development of reuse systems. And that's also especially when it comes to the development of shared infrastructure and things like that. That's very important that we target the right actors. And increasingly, producer responsibility organizations have been involved in that work, on top of system providers and so on. So more as a meta sort of organizer in some countries. And that's especially true when EPR, extended producer responsibility schemes are pushing them in the direction of pushing producers in the direction of taking, like, of spending some of the money of their revenues on the development of prevention and reuse systems. Why does it matter? Because there are some legal obligations coming. You will find all that in greater details in the blueprint. But it's important to notice that there are packaging waste reduction targets in there for the first time at the EU level: 5% by 2030, 10% by 2035, and 15% by 2040. We explained it all in an annex to the blueprint that you can find on the blueprint page. But it's important to keep that in mind. It should be a driver to your action, because even though when it comes to takeaway packaging, there is no reuse target per se. It's a non-binding reuse target of 10%. But even though it's non-binding, it's a big part of your waste that you need to manage at the local level, and we need to tackle it. So if it's non-binding, but you better get started in terms of addressing that waste stream as well. And that's what this work is about, because it's highly visible as well. So there are multiple incentives for you to get involved. And then there is an obligation, that's a true obligation, by February 2028 for HoReCa actors to offer reusable packaging options within a reuse system. They need to make sure that reuse is as easy and affordable as single use, so no worse conditions, no extra fees. And it has to be the businesses need to make reuse options clearly visible with signage and information boards. So instead of doing it halfway through, well, let's do it properly and let's design things properly. That's our message. We support and we benefit from local action in the different cities mentioned in there. So the blueprint initially is based on cases of testings and projects in Aarhus, so Denmark, Paris, Rotterdam, Ghent and Leuven in Belgium, and then Berlin and Barcelona as well. And now Lisbon is being brought in as well through the involvement of our new partner, Circular Economy Portugal, as well. And that also includes the deployment of machines on the public streets to collect reusable cups. So yes, there is a lot to say about that, but just to give you you a short look at it. And all these projects are summarized as project snapshots. You can find that at the end of the blueprint or as annex as well, and then on the main web page as well, so that each time you wonder what's going on in a given city setup, then just have a look, and then you can always get in touch with the local partner as well. So just giving that to you, and all the pictures in the blueprint and so on are true pictures taken from the local projects, which is pretty cool as well. So these were like the projects in Aarhus, Berlin, and Rotterdam. Not going into the details because it's just too much, but you can explore that later on. And then finalizing this presentation on something important, which is the blueprint essential criteria. So there are 5 criteria in the blueprint which you need to take into consideration if you want to design your system well. That's our message. That's what we've been working on for about two and a half years now. And that's the second version of the blueprint. We had a much simpler one initially to guide the local action based on the first input from stakeholders. But this second version, is much more practical, is really anchored in concrete local action. And so we wanted to put forward this guide with clear pictures and so on to show that it's happening, it's possible. There are some hurdles, some difficulties, but things can take a shape that is, much more that you can grasp much more and consider in your local context. So starting for each of the essential criteria, I'll give you a quick look at how it looks like, what you can find in there. But then it's very much up to you to dig in further and then through the online course. But like the effectiveness aspect is very, very much important. That's where you will hear and learn about the need for return rates, for the number of rotations, all the aspects linked to traceability, everything that is linked as well to the role of policy in supporting system effectiveness. Apologize. Yes. And then you will see, for instance, the places where there is a ban on single-use packaging in place, or places where, like Tübingen, we've talked a lot about that as Serious Europe, about implementing a tax or fee on single-use and what it brings you as a municipality if you do that. And then, yes, there are lots of considerations when it comes to effectiveness, but one of the key message we want to give with that essential criteria is that you need to aim for performance. It's tough work. It requires some serious design work when you want to do that in real life, but you can't really implement a reuse system for longer than a certain amount of time. Like we aim for within 3 years based on feedback from and learnings, but you can't run it if it's below 90% for an extended period of time, and it needs to be above as well the break-even rotation cycle. So you need a minimum number of rotations in order to outpass the single use from an environmental perspective. And you don't need to aim for the minimum number of rotations, you need to aim for the maximum number of rotations, back to the definition that I referred to initially. So that's some serious work, but some systems really prove that it's possible. If you take the case of Aarhus, they've been running that project for a year and a half now. Past 1 year, they were at between 85 and 88% return rate. So for each 100 reusable packaging being put on the market out there, 85 to 88 of them were returned, which is not enough, but it's a very, very good way of showing that it's possible if it's designed well. And there are other systems out there that show it as well. Just moving to recognition. So systems must basically be easily understood and highly visible to users. Because if you don't do that, then it will hamper really adoption rate and the credibility and everything that is linked to behavioral change as well. So you need really to make sure that all the elements that you design in there are recognizable. You can do that through different means. So within the blueprint, you will have a look at the different type of communication campaigns that you can run and the importance of it. But communication campaigns alone are not enough. So you need also to define other elements. Have a look, have a thought at it. I think it's quite telling what is in there. Something that is very much discussed is the use of a reused logo. So there are some considerations around it. There is the Meerwerk logo example here to show what it means to have a logo for reuse, and what is truly important in the background. It is about governance, making sure that your logo has a meaning and it's not just a trademark without anything in the background. So we are sharing those considerations in there based on, again, concrete examples. And then a quick look at the key elements of a recognizable system. So all these are true from the different projects run. On the top of it, you have from Leuven and Ghent, and then the Horus project with reverse vending machines on the streets. And then the curve at the bottom on the packaging is from the Rotterdam project, also with RVMs, but within the Rotterdam Central Station. And again, lots of considerations in there in terms of designing it. Interoperability, a lot of talks are happening around interoperability and how to make it truly happening. What we want to emphasize here is that interoperability is key because you need to be able to speak the same language through the system. You need to be able to tackle different types of packaging, eventually technologies and operators. You don't want something that is really closed and close to others, to collaboration with others, to potential service providers coming into the system later on. So you need to design with that idea of interoperability for the long run. And there are quite a few things to do in there, also in terms of stackability, material durability, the idea that whether you should use standardized formats or not. Well, we explain that it depends on the local context. I give here on that side a scenario 2. There was a scenario 1, which is basically the difference between a market where there is existing competition between different reuse systems, like the German case, where you have brands with thousands of points of sales, and then you have other environments. So scenario 2, which is here, which is where actually you have limited or no existing reuse infrastructure. And in there, well, you have an opportunity to standardize things and go a bit faster in terms of interoperability. So these are the sort of things you need to consider when designing your project as well. Then there is all the work around labeling and data and traceability, what sort of collection points you use, whether it is high-tech, low-tech, whether you do it at supermarkets using existing deposit return schemes. This is becoming more and more widespread in Europe, more and more systems, because it's pushed by the legislation. So there is definitely an incentive to try integrate the reuse systems with existing or upcoming DRS infrastructure. So also something to definitely consider. In terms of inclusiveness, you will find them some considerations for implementation when it comes to the idea that system must be accessible, fair, and easy for everyone to use. And so we encourage really everyone to make sure that this inclusiveness is a core design principle. And not just something that comes on top of it, because that wouldn't be true inclusiveness, right? So you need to make sure the system is open, that there is a stakeholder engagement process, that you design things for scalability again. And then you need to make sure that it's people-centric design. You minimize barriers for all sort of people. It has to be as accessible as possible to the wide population. And then you work also things like the right incentives. It might differ based on where you are. So whether you go for cash or cashless and things like that. And then last but not least, it's about the guaranteed safety. Very important. It's something we want to, and we are currently working a lot on, because we want to ensure that if you rotate a packaging, that you design it, you design the system well enough as well, so that the material that you use is safe throughout the cycles, the rotations of the packaging. And so we are currently working on guidelines, safety guidelines for testing the packaging and the material across its life cycle. And there should be no discrimination between single use and reuse here, because that's often something that is being pushed by people who do not have an interest to change and switch from away from single use. But single use comes with a lot of health issues. There is the PFAS scandal, as we know it. A lot of the fast food chains out there have been using PFAS for many years. We know how detrimental it is to the health and to the environment. And so with reusable packaging, you would eliminate this. But you need to make sure that the packaging, especially if you use plastic, is of good enough polymers, that you use it for the right reasons. You don't heat something that cannot be heated. You wash it properly with the right conditions. And so it's a mixture of hygiene and toxicity aspect as well. Yeah, and I'll stop here because there is also, again, so much to say about this criteria. And I'll just finish here with a look at some of the endorsers of that work. There will be a campaign launched soon with all great people and minds from these organizations and others actually speaking in favor of this blueprint, because they do like it. They believe it's a work that is valuable and drives the minds in the right direction, and policymakers and so on. And so they stand ready to chip in and to support that work, so we are very grateful for that. And yes, so I think I'll stop here. There might be some questions around this work.
Perfect. So yeah, if you have any questions for Nathan about any of this, feel free to drop them in the Q&A function. And thank you for walking us through the project and the blueprint. And now, if there was a municipality somewhere in Europe or maybe even globally, of course, we don't want the blueprint to be just hooked up on the website for decorational purposes. So how would you wish, or what would you wish that the municipality would do with the blueprint?
I think it's not only the blueprint, it's the course as well that comes with it. We've designed this really as a package, hand in hand with MiZA, the MiZA team. And I think because the blueprint is great to give you a sense of what you can potentially implement, because it's tested in different contexts. But everyone's context is sort of a bit different, right? And you have all sort of stakeholders gravitating around. We know how much scattered is the producer responsibility organization picture across Europe, each one working differently and so on. We're pushing, by the way, to harmonize a bit those rules. But if you work with or you are a PRO and you want to engage in that work, well, you need to look at it for yourself as well, and design things in a way that can be truly implementable in your local context. And same applies to cities and some reuse system providers. But everyone sort of from those I mentioned can have a much better idea of how it could look like concretely if thanks to this blueprint, I think. And then for the rest, I think they need to get started and do the thinking process and so on. Onboarding your stakeholders. I believe the reuse online course is then really an added value.
Perfect, thank you. And yeah, we came up with the idea of attaching some learning to the blueprint when we realized that, okay, basically everybody needs to learn something about reuse, because the topic is evolving so fast that it's very hard to get your head around it and also try and get it right, because nobody wants to make a mistake, create a system that doesn't work, it's not efficient. But then what to do with that, because it's all fine and well to read through the blueprint, it all makes sense when you're reading it, but then when you go back to your work and try to think, how do I implement this in my own context, because I'm not Aarhus and I'm not Rotterdam and I'm not Barcelona, how do I go about it? And the course is really to kind of like try and help you contextualize and localize the learnings of all these different projects that happen in the Reuse Vanguard project into a local context. So try and analyze the cases a bit. What happened? Why did it happen the way it did? And then what learnings could I extract to my own context, no matter what it is? So it's really like working with your municipality or wherever you are considering setting up such a system. The course, first of all, you can find them on the website of the Mission Zero Academy, and they are hooked in quite a few other places as well. So it's hopefully easy to find and easy to attend. And the courses are designed so that you can start them at any time. They are self-paced, so you can get started in the middle of the night on Sunday if that's your preferred working time. You don't need to wait anybody to give you access or do anything. And then the course is really walking you through to analyze your own context and how do these different elements of the blueprint could work in your own context. So it's going like step by step, and the main assignment there is that you're building your own case. So you're building lesson by lesson elements into your own reusable packaging assessment for your own city. So yeah, one by one you are stepping into that. And yeah, I could show you.
I think it would be great, yes, Kaisa, if you could explain, what people can expect to learn in them. Maybe the difference as well between the two courses that are uploaded in there, because people might have questions about this. And then yes, how do they work in practice? I think it would be good if you could give a quick screen through.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's share the screen so we can all see. So first of all, the page for the Reuse Vanguard project, it looks like this. And well, all the front pages of all our courses look the same. So here you can really see like what you can expect to learn. And in this particular course, you are really like working through the fundamentals. So for example, the essential criteria of the blueprint, you will be working with them to really understand, what does recognition mean? What does it mean in practice? What does it look like in practice in Berlin? And how could it look like in practice in my city? And then you're building up your own case. Here you can see all the modules that you're going through. So first of all, we are just assessing what is even a reusable packaging system. Like, is refill reusable packaging system? Like Nathan said earlier, it's not. Or is bring your own, or what is a reuse system, so that we don't fall into the pitfalls of misunderstanding things. What are the characteristics? Also something that Nathan explained a bit earlier, like what does make a reusable packaging system. And here you are also trying to assess in your own context, how could these characteristics look like in my city? The definitions, just to make sure that they are also aligned with what, for example, what the law says. So they are really to build your confidence. Like when you need to go and pitch your idea and your system to somebody, you would at least feel confident in knowing that what you're talking about is actually correct and based on the most recent information. And then we are also talking about who are the stakeholders, because like you probably understood from Nathan's explanation is that nobody can do this alone. We all need like the stakeholders around it, no matter who they are. We're setting up some goals for our system. So for example, the 90% return rate, and other like essential characteristics. The same again, like you're thinking, what could be my goal? What would be the goal of my system, and how can I achieve those goals? Assessing, for example, the successes of the Aarhus case, like what did they do there to get to such good results so quickly? And am I able to repeat those? And if yes, how? We pass through all the essential criteria, thinking again, how do they look like in my context? Taking advantage of the elements that are, for example, already there. Like, do I have a DRS system already in place in my country? And can I take something useful from there as an element for it? Like, do people have already the right habits that are needed? What is the legal framework, both on the European level, because like Nathan said, there is some regulations, but then there can also be some local regulations. Like we heard about the case of Tübingen. It's a local tax. It's not the Germany level tax, at least so far. So what are the powers of municipalities, and then what's also required from us by the European Union? And then at the very last step, you are trying to define your own plan. How could I take this forward, or how could my city or region take this forward? So the end product of this whole course is it's kind of like a short pitch. What are the barriers? How could these different elements that make the system efficient and functional, how could they look like in my local context? And then thinking about how to pitch it. And of course, like the assignments are set so that you will be receiving some feedback from the experts about the system. So that's how it looks like from the front page. And then if you want to have a quick look of how it looks from the actual course side, it looks like this. So you can always follow your progress, how far you have got. There is, for example, these assignments of thinking, is this, for example, a reusable packaging system? Assessing the few like key characteristics of the system. And at the end of it, you will also have the expert answers, like why is it and why is it not correct? You can also explore some real life cases. We have hooked up some webinars and other videos that are made about the different local projects of the Reuse Vanguard project. So there is, for example, a conference presentation that was done not too long ago, another webinar where we can explore more in detail the Aarhus project. And in the other modules here, there is, for example, videos and case studies and things like that, for example, from Barcelona here. But the idea is not that you spend all your day on the platform. The pedagogy behind this is that you would start thinking about these concepts and these ideas in your own context. Start looking around you a bit, like what could be a reuse infrastructure in my own area, for example. And then you just come back onto the platform to fill your assignments. And with assignments, we don't mean reports of 20 pages. We are talking about PowerPoint slides where you're putting a few bullet points of the key things that you have learned. And yeah, that's how you progress. You go at your own pace. And that's the way forward. And then about the second course, because we have two, this is the more self-paced and really centering around the essential criteria and the main functions of the reusable packaging blueprint. But then we have a more maybe like action-oriented course, which is done together with the Deutsche Umwelthilfe, excuse my German, who is also an RSVP project partner. And they are more like talking about reuse as such, and how does, for example, a reuse infrastructure look like, these like very practical aspects. And here you can see a comparative table of the different elements of the course. So if you're wondering like, okay, I have time now for one course, which should I go for? You can make your own assessment here, for example, the learning outcomes and what you can do. And I think the one very key difference is that the championing reusables in the takeaway sector, so the course with DUH, it's actually 2 live interactive sessions, so you need to be somewhere at the right time online, but still at the right place. It's a very good opportunity to speak with an expert and connect with a network of people in similar situations as you, but it requires this time commitment at a certain time. The other one is on demand, what you can do. And yeah, the reusable packaging fundamentals, so the self-paced course, it's more answering the question of like, what is even a well-functioning reusable packaging system, and how could it look like in my context. And then the other one is looking more of the tactics of how do I make this even happen when you have the big broad strokes ready. And yeah, the self-paced one is looking more into the holistic system design. And then the other one is looking more like targeted actions, certain policies. So kind of like more narrow scope, but several actions there. We will also drop this link to you. It's on the Mission Zero Academy website, so you can find it at any time. But here you can find it at any time. Is there any questions? Anything else to clarify while we are here? If not, we're also running out of time. So if you have a quick question, now would be the very, very last moment to type it into Q&A function, or you can, of course, send us an email afterwards. But otherwise, thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully this was helpful for you. You at least understood a bit better what we are doing in the Reuse Vanguard project. How does the blueprint support your work? And then with these online learning opportunities, how we can really build up your skills and your confidence in like really turning from a concept into action in as many cities as possible. And thank you, Nathan, for joining us.
With great pleasure.